G'day and welcome. And we're getting stacks of rain. It's quite cold out here. I guess it's the middle of winter, so you can't expect anything different. So in this video, we're going to be looking at a bunch of old Holden parts, or a few old Holden parts, including a crash box, which isn't the correct one for our EJ Holden, but I do want to familiarise myself with it a little bit. We've also got this lovely wooden box from sunny South Australia, so we're going to have a look at that first. Now I've got some idea of what's in here, but to be quite candid, I've forgotten some of the details. Oh, hang on, I'll use these pliers. Oh, a rather lovely EJ Holden instrument cluster. EJ Holdens are a little bit different in that they have a 100-mile-an-hour speedo instead of a 120. This is showing 81,000 miles, and you've got your 3 lights there and your fuel gauge. Of course, this can all be cleaned up. It looks magnificent. I don't know what the story with that is. Obviously, we have to have a bit of a look in there. Harvey will know exactly how to work on these things. Whoops. I think he said he had one, I'm not sure. Let's keep going. There's another cluster or another speedo. Same sort of thing. Another fuel gauge which doesn't look to have been tampered with. Might be able to do something with that. We have the headlight switch. The rheostat looks to be in good condition. The little wiper there. That'll come up a treat. We'll clean it up and put contact spray and that sort of thing on. That's good. Another warning light pod. A selection of carburettors. That's missing its choke. That's a good rebuildable core by the look of it. There's a complete one. That one seems a bit jammed, but it's got a choke on it, so we can do something with that. Another carburetor. That's complete. It's got the choke, it's got everything we need. We'll just check some numbers and see what goes where. And a rather lovely twin carburetor inlet manifold. That looks in immaculate condition. It's got the linkage there. We can certainly do something with that. Hydro blasted, that would come up like brand new. Looks obviously the wrong way, but that's quite swished. So Graham, thanks very much. That's awesome. We can do some good work with some of this stuff.
I had diesel squirting out of the thing. I poured like, must have been close to a gallon or something in there. And most of it ended up going down the exhaust. But
yeah.
I'd taken the plugs out and some of it was flushing out of the side.
This is Craig, a friend of mine. Craig's got himself here a chassis. What is it? Toyota Crown?
Yeah, so it was a 65 Crown wagon. And the plan is to get this all blasted down, get it sprayed up, and under the FC Holden wagon.
You give it to Sam at Tech Coat. He'll sandblast and powder coat it.
Yeah, I didn't know how far down to...
He's in Bayswater.
I was thinking, pull the exhaust and take the brake lines off and, make it a bit more accessible to get all the rust out.
I would have used this at the school when we were doing vet. I used to get Holden 1-tonner ones, but stick a seat on and drive them around.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, you haven't got a steering column, but it's got the box there.
Yeah.
What is that, a 3-speed manual or a 4-speed?
I think it's a 3.
Yeah.
But my knowledge of Toyota Crown's pretty,
I remember them, and you look at it, it's like 1965 compared to what we were doing here. It's overhead cam, you got split headers. That thing had breathed quite well. It's got a viscous on it.
Yeah, viscous coupling on the fan. And
you don't see these anymore. I rebuilt a 5E while I was at Toyota.
Even things like having a spin-on filter.
It's got a dual barrel carburetor. Spin-on filter,
you think about like 1962 was the transition, I think, in the grey motor in the 138 from an internal oil screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know much about them. Yeah.
So the Japanese were doing spin-on filters well before.
Oh, the Japanese have always been streets ahead of us, haven't they?
They have, yeah.
It's double wishbone, is it? Oh, yeah.
The important thing is being able to shove a whole lot of power through the chassis.
Yeah.
With the style of construction of the FC, being a monocoque, there's a certain amount of power you put into it and it just wants to twist.
Yeah.
And putting it on a rigid chassis like this is...
It's a pretty healthy looking chassis, I'll tell you that.
Well, it is. If I look at it though, I'm pretty much stuck at the moment with this drivetrain.
Yeah.
Because the clearance in the centre of the cross frame.
Yes.
Doesn't give you a whole lot of room to play with. So if you are going to mount up something that's got heaps of power,
yeah,
you certainly can't increase the ride height. You might be able to lower it a little bit and muck around, but
you can reset your springs and get it lower.
Yeah, yeah.
People put blocks in. I hate blocks.
Yeah, you can definitely drop it down, but
yeah,
you certainly can't go up any. So if you wanted extra clearance, you'd be challenged because you can't cut that piece out. That's where all the strength.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, in there. Yeah, definitely.
The two together, so. Yeah, but it's.
But that, if you lowered the back, that's going to increase your clearance there anyway.
Yeah, yeah, it'll give you a bit more room. But yeah, at this point in time,
got an old Holden out the back there.
Yeah, yeah, that's the FC. There's almost no floor in it whatsoever. There's a little piece of where the two halves of the floor where they're manufactured overlap in the centre, and it kind of looks like a bow that runs across the car. Like
it's completely gone, is it?
But that's the only bit that's holding the two sides together. Everything else is pretty much gone crusty and rusted out. And
it's pretty standard with old cars like that, isn't it?
Yeah, well the inner and the outer sill is barely there.
Oh, really?
So the driver's door is actually hanging down.
Oh, it's a wagon. Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, wow.
So that door leaning back there, that's the driver's door, and I'm actually going to be trying to put that on in order to figure out how far out the sill is.
Yeah.
How far it's dropped.
Do you mind me filming this?
I don't mind at all.
I love those things.
Yeah, it's looking a bit sad at the moment.
Yeah, but they all do.
Yeah.
At least you got doors. That thing I bought hasn't even got doors.
Yeah.
Well, it's coming with some doors. How long you had it for?
I've probably had it here for about 6 to 8 months.
Okay, not long.
Yeah, look,
it's got an alternator and everything on it.
Yeah, I would have done more with it, except there's just no workspace at the back. So.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not coming to any harm here. Yes, of course, the wonderful agapanth. It's very common this neck of the woods in the nice bluey purpley flower. You can also get a white one as well. The only thing really quite unusual about this one is it's got a gearbox growing out of it. It's been sitting in the garden for around 3 years at Craig's place, and of course he pulled the cover off and it looked alright. But there's bound to be one or two little secrets there that we don't really like too much. Anyway, I got it home, gave it a little bit of a clean up, and had a good look inside. I thought the one that came with the car looked a bit better than this. I didn't know at the time I got this. This is an earlier car, maybe FC or something like that. There'll be plenty of people that know exactly what it is. It's been sitting in a garden for 3 years. But I want to just pull it apart and figure out how it works. Well, I know how it works, but figure out the ins and outs of one of these gearboxes. It is locked up. The clutch fork's locked up, and it does come with enough hay on it to feed a horse. But this sort of thing is actually, if the gear sets are okay in it, and I'm told they are, this is the sort of thing that's very rebuildable. It looks terrible, but once you blast that, and I always use hydroblasting, it'll come up like new. There'll be a bit of pitting where it's had some rust on it, but it won't, it's not a bad thing. So it's important not to get too turned off with these sorts of things, provided that the water hasn't got inside it. Now, I would have said sitting upended in a patch of agapanthus, it would have generally, or definitely got water inside, but apparently it looks alright, so I'll have a look at that in a moment. This thing's a pig. It's all rusted in. Look, the input, can I see? The input shaft is all seized up. You can see all the rust behind it there. But, oddly enough, it does seem, things like countershaft is mint, you know, and the shaft that goes through the countershaft. And new old stock parts for these things is down there. I'll clean them up and I'll show you later. new old stock or good second-hand parts for these are just ridiculously expensive. Rico, they're about $1,300, I think. Rico kits are about $200. So, you know, it's well worth reconditioning it. I'm not going to for this car. I'm just going to clean it up, make it work, put it together so that it's a good core. Because I think it's a waste sitting in a garden. But you can just see. Wear-wise, it isn't too bad. It's just rusty. And a bit, you know, it's been outside for a long time. Right, parts. It's not bad, actually. It's selector shafts don't look too bad. They're a bit scaly and horrible, but we can make good of that. That's for the lay shaft. It's got a tiny step in it. So it's a bit of wear on that. That's for the reverse idler. The reverse idler gear itself is fine. And other selector, and you know, yeah, it's okay. This part of the selector's knackered though. Well, at least it's seized in here, and less than ideal. You might even soak that in vinegar or whatever. The main shaft itself is pretty good. Input shaft, and so forth isn't too bad. The bearing was knackered. You can see there's been water in there, obviously, but I've freed that up. Certainly for storing it's okay. The needle rollers are still in there, as well as some water. It's pretty grotty. Clusters, they're alright. It's a bit corroded in here, so it might be prudent. Oh, I can't get that down. To free all this up and make it nice, you know. And okay, that comes off that way. That's right. Yeah, that looks alright. Teeth are all good. You know, it's just dirty and grimy and grotty and all the rest of it. So, I guess it's just a point of pulling this all apart. You can see with the synchro runs in there. That all looks fairly good, actually. It's just full of snot, that's all. So we'll just check it all out, put it back together. I don't really care, because I'm not going to use this box, but it's a good source of spares. You can see there's water still coming out of that. So I'll have to free that up, clean it up, free it up. It should be alright. Probably the worst part about it is, well, even that's not too bad. It's probably, hopefully hasn't lost its case hardening or whatever. But it is better than I thought it would be, but it's still not great. There was damage. The case is knackered because I went to punch that out, or punch it in. For the reverse idler, there's a pin that sort of sits flush, and it looks like it's got an old crack in it there, which is rubbish, really. So it was only sort of held in here and here. It's not a highly stressed member by any stretch. All it does is it just sits there and rolls, basically, until the gear sort of engages with it. But I'll need a casing, and I've also wrecked this from the input shaft part. It's, yeah, the snout, the front snout, it sort of fits like that, and that was all sort of rusted, and I jimmied off it. Of course, I broke it. That's not a hard part to replace, but it's a pain in the neck having done that. I'm banging this thing together quickly. I've sort of kind of cleaned it up. Good idea to clean out all these grooves here between where your synchro rings sort of lock in. We're just storing stuff for now. I'll get on there. That should slide easily, actually. Should be right. These are supposed to have a steel clip in them, I think. And we don't have that binding. Alright, it's got a film of oil. That's all good. Give it a bit more. And it's got a couple of dogs on it here and here, which sort of marry up with that. But before we do that, we've got to put a little clip in. Gee whiz. I'll just do that. Where is my screw stick? Just make sure that still rotates with that in. That's not in properly though. There we go. Oh no, that's cool. All right, sweet. So we've got that little guy done. Right, and then we've got this guy here. It's got a couple of dogs on it, and they coincide with those bits there. So we'll just put a bit of oil in here, and well, there you go on there. There we go. And there's a thrust washer. Whoops, when we put in the gearbox, that goes there. But we've got a sort of, I can't remember how these bits go. I've just got to try and figure that out. That one's got needle rollers that go inside it, which I've cleaned up. Again, you know, you might want to put new ones in, but we're not going to. So I'll clean those up. I'll stuff that with a bit of grease and then just put all the needle rollers in there because they go onto the main shaft. And I've got to put that clip on too. It wouldn't be what I call perfect, and in an ideal world, well, I would change it. Bit of oil shut it up though. These are interesting because as it spins, which is that way, yeah, it is noisy, you can see that screw going back, and what happens, there's no seal in here, so any oil that wants to come out is actually, as the engine rotates, this goes engine speed, it's forced to work its way back instead of coming forward because it hits that slinger and flicks off into a channel, which then comes around here, drains back into the gearbox by gravity. So I'm just going to put this around the input shaft. I don't even know why I took it off. I'm just going to pop them in, and they'll sort of hold each other around the radius. When you get a kit for these, you get all new rollers and all sorts of goodies. I think you get a new canter shaft as well, or the shaft for the canter shaft. Heck of a shame about that thing there. I can't remember what I did with it now. Yeah, it's as good as knackered, this case. I've just used, when you have rattle cans and they get low, they tend to spatter, and then I just stick them on a shelf and use a new one. You can heat them up and you can do this sort of stuff, but I never bother with that. And I had 2 scrap cans left, which covered this in some paint. Interesting, GM seemed to use Gliptol in these. It's got that reddish sort of look about it. I was going to lube up this reasonably sad rear bearing. I can't get in there. But it is, all things considered, considering it's been full of water and rust, it is quite reasonably quiet, but you'll find with stuff like that, the hardening, the case hardening is gone. So, you know, in a car like this, the same as that thing, you could use it as a, you know, once every couple of weeks around the block sort of thing, but if you're using it for any longevity, or you need any longevity, you couldn't really use it. Selector shafts, that is this side, I think. Yes, I think it is. And this one here, which is caught in the camera leg, is this side. And there's 3 short, is that the right way? Yeah. 3 short grooves, 3 wider apart grooves. Of course, the shorter ones go in this side. So that means I'm going to have to put this in first. I might just pop a bit of grease on there, just to start with, to hold him in place, and I can just run it into that groove there. Yeah, it goes. I think it goes in like that. There it is. I've got to put that guy in because that has to marry up with that groove on the shifter fork, which is in there, like that. And that could be right there, I think. I'm not sure. I'm making this up, in case you hadn't already figured that out. And where's the other one of those? Sweet. Alright. Time for more grease. And get it over that peg. In here. And that one goes over that front fork. Over there. And then sits over that peg. like that. I'm just going to have to move that forward up here to get third gear in. I think it's third. And there's a thrust washer that goes at the back, but what we've got to kind of do is get the main shaft in through there, and then that has to fit inside that dog, which I've just knocked it all out, which is really, really not handy. I'm just going to rotate this. It should be around about there, and then that should push up into that cluster or into that synchro hub. Or maybe we just do it like that. Hang on a minute. That's it too. That's it there, right? I'm going to take the shaft out again. And then just put that thrust washer behind. Maybe I'll just go by field of vision. There we go. And then that has to go over that rail. There. Right. Now we can push this in. Let me get that in now. This one here, that dog is still out. There we go. Much better. I think I've got this clip in right. I can't see what I'm doing past the camera, but it looks to be in. The same amount all the way around. So then we need to pop him out, shunt the whole gear set back, and put the input shaft in. Can't reach around the camera. And there's some circlips that hold it in once we get it toward the back. Just going to get it into that rear bearing, get it nice and square. So yeah, we can click down, looks like a neutral. We're up, we're in gear, and this one here will move this between clusters at the top. Those two selector shafts round the wrong way. That being said, the actual selector, what do you call it, slide itself was alright. It was just the shaft had wrong, so I could just swap them over. Now the problem is this part of the reverse idler carrier is broken off, and that was my fault. And the pin is just a, where is it? Here, I'll show you. They're actually designed to go, you know, they sit like that, and you knock them inside the shaft, then knock it out. And I saw it, knocked it out, and then it fell off. But there was a fracture in it beforehand, which, when it shows up, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, inadvertently, I think somebody else has made the same mistake, although this has been messed around with, because the two spring retainers on the synchros were missing. So, I don't know what the story of that is. But anyway, it is what it is. Now, reverse idler sits in here, and it's important to get it sort of that way. It looks like it can go that way too, but you've got to have it so that the teeth are in a V, facing you. I'm going to pop a bit of grease, which will act like glue, and that sits. There's a little rebate there. Gosh, I can't see what I'm doing. Probably because I've got a camera there, hey? And same over yonder, although I'm going to do this one, yeah, I'm going to do it a bit differently. The other thing with it, thrust faces this side, so there's just a bush in there. There's no bearing as such, or needle rollers or anything like that. I'm just going to pop a bit of oil in there and stick it in. Right. I'm going to centre this front one. It should be around there somewhere. I'll just pop a nut on the outside, and that'll hold the reverse idler. Camera shaft is going to go like that, in there somewhere. And there's two flat washers, well three. There's a thrust washer that just fits in there. Just in there, like that. We put the rollers around, then we put that one in, then the thrust washer. So I'm just going to bang a bit of grease in there and fill her up with needle rollers. Then we just put another thrusty on it, or another other retaining washer, if you like. Then after that, your thrust washer goes on, like that. So I'm just going to do the other side, and we're good to go. Alright, let's put a bit of a wheelie on there. And drop him in. Try not to dislodge everything like I just did. That's rather stupid. Get this guy in without making those thrust washers fall. I think I've got that in there. Let's get a soft drift. Assembly lube's much better for this type of thing than what I'm doing here, but anyway, she's rotating. Once those detent balls are in, that'll all stabilise and be cool. I'm just going to pop a bit of oil in both of those. Grease would have probably been a better choice. There's a detent ball that goes in each one, which I kind of washed off, and a spring that goes in each one, and that will, and there's a copper washer that goes in each one, which isn't the cleanest, and there's more, and it's not steak knives. And there is a hex head type fastener that goes in each one, and that will sort the detent mechanisms out. And with the old black rattle can, I don't even know if I've got any more. I've got to buy some new ones. And whoopsie, try not to hit you. There we go. Cool. Everything is very rotatable and working well. I can't select gears with it because I haven't got these unseized yet. So that one's seized solid in there. So I'm going to have to figure that out. But for in the meantime, I don't think it's worth sort of spending too much more time on it. So I'm just going to bang that on, and that'll just keep it covered up for now. And I'm bored of it, so I want to go and do something else. Which way does this go? Ah, sneaky. It goes that way. Right, so we've got a little crash box sitting down there. It's not going to come to any harm. I'll just use it as a storage area for all those gears. And if the EJ one comes back, because apparently that's been left in the weather as well, and I need any parts, hopefully I can raid this one. All the shifter stuff's different, but there's probably a limit to what's interchangeable, but you know what, it should be alright. Right, Graham stuck 3 carburettors in a box and sent them to me, and they're all BXOV1 bases, throttle bodies, which is the 1 32nd Venturi size. So that's right, big grey motors. 2 of them, they're identified with a number at the top here, and 2 of them are 23105s, or one of them is a 23105, one of them is a 23105C, so that would probably be a revision. In the paraphernalia on the forums, there was a gentleman, I think Harv was his name, and he's written a couple of documents, one on the crash box, and he's written a bunch of documents actually, but he's also written one on these carburettors, and he's quoted them as 23105D, which I'm assuming is the last of the revisions, or at least a further revision of these 2. But these are the 2 which are 132.5 carbs. They're basically 1948 to 1959 Holden grey motor, so 132 cubic inch, 48 215 to FC model, I think. This one is a 3001. Hang on, let me just see. 3001.0. That is EJ automatic. So I'm going to start to whip these apart. Just have a bit of a squizzy inside. They've been messed with, and to that extent, as you know, there's screws loose and all this sort of stuff. So someone's been fiddling around in here. I'm just going to get some tools ready, and I'll be back. These carburetors can be bought reconditioned on eBay around $430 each, and we're not doing that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to pay that much because I'm lousy. Why isn't that turning? So we're just going to pull some stuff off. The overhaul kit's around $90, $85, something to that effect. And we'll send them away and get them blasted. And I'll just drop that screwdriver. They say, or I read somewhere, that the Stromberg WW, which I've got one of those as well on a 186S manifold, is actually a better choice than an X2 type setup, which is what we're sort of doing. Just because variations in carburetor and power valve operation means that they don't always act in perfect synchronicity and therefore less efficient, which doesn't surprise me one bit. Oh, this is squeaky. That's quite nice. It's gluggy there. It's quite... Oh, it's not even too bad there. They're burnt over though. Oh, tricky. Tricky clip. Let's just take that off. We'll put everything in a container so that we can release the accelerator pump. It's got a bit of wear there. Still. This thing doesn't appear to be in bad nick, to be quite candid. That's really clean. The clip. And we've got a few other bits and pieces in there. Okay, there's a little screen down there. What about getting these guys out here? That's a bit dirty. Let's have a look. Can we get that out? Yep, we can. So here's your accelerator check valve. It's a one-way valve and it works quite well. And I'll tell you what, I'm reasonably impressed with the condition of it. I mean, so far, it looks pretty good. It's really good, actually. I just want to get that jet out. What about these? How do we get those off? This is really good. That's squeaky, that thing. This thing's been reconditioned before. And it looks like it's been done quite well. Like there's nothing on here that screams backyard, really. Probably fine until I bloody got my fat hands onto it. Sweet. Right, so if we look at that, that's got no clearance, that's schmick. It's actually awesome. And I love plated carburetors. Every resto I do, I go nuts with it sort of thing, just because it just looks so much nicer. all looking pretty schmicko. What does the mixture look like? I can see somebody's painted this as well, and that's what all the Carby Rico guys seem to do with these. That's fairly dirty. It would have been used, like it's all black in there, but it's not bad at all. You know, it could be a heck of a lot worse than what it is. It's just a port. Yeah, that's pressed in, I'll leave that. And that is that. It looks fairly good. Right, these big screws holding the throttle body on. Let's take them out and see what lies beneath. I've mucked around with these before years and years ago, and I don't remember ever having trouble getting a throttle body off. They always seem to be reasonably loose, which is probably not a good thing, but that's a genuine Holden gasket. Oh no, I thought it said Holden. Yeah, don't know what that crap is. They probably have asbestos in them for all I know. I need to get those main jets out. I haven't got a jet tool. And I've got to get these guys out here too. These are being problematic. Gee, don't want to go. We want to smarten the appearance of the thing up by just taking these out. Getting them done. These things are a mongrel. I just wanted to see if I wasn't sure how these came out. I thought they were like a Ford one in that they were sort of pressed in. Whoopsie. I've already broken one set of pliers which I've got much more control over. Yeah, they're the ones that I use all the time too. Here we go. I think I've got it. There we go. We got that one. They should be the same length. The little vacuum valves to let in more fuel. Right, so I've got all these three carburetors in bits. I've got two bits of wire, or sorry, one bit of wire on each of these bits here, two bits on these ones here, and nothing on those. So I know when I get them back, they're all going to look great, but I know which goes where. Oddly enough, that one's perfect. That one, which is the dirty one, that's been in the weather, actually has equivalent sort of throttle shaft play to that one. This has got the worst throttle shaft play, so there's a good chance I'll use this throttle body, which is identical to you know, the same spec as the other ones. And I've just got to take the main jets out. So once I've got the tool to take the main jets out, I want to have a look at the size of those. Well, then I'll take these all to get blasted, and I've only got two choke levers, but again, you know, I only need two carburetors. So there's lots of good kit here. You know, we've got one float that's obviously been replaced, it's brand new. We've got another one that's not too bad. And we've got one that probably looks the worst of all, but they're all probably serviceable, you know. So I'm keeping these bits together because they're the ones that came off these throttle bodies, so obviously they're going to seal the best, or they'll be worn into each other. Instruments, let's have a look at these. At first glance it looks pretty good. Nice aluminium fascia, although it is a little bit sort of dented and so forth along here. 3 warning lights, oil generator, temperature, little chrome little doobies in there. Looks quite nice. That one's a bit dull. There's a little moth in there we've got to get out. I guess the first thing when we're doing this is to get a little bit of spray. Just while we've got it like that, we'll loosen it off. I'll just grab a screwdriver. We'll start with the speedo. Oh, this has been played with. Just sheet metal screws. How many are there? Just the 1, 2. There's only 2. Okay. Is that a washer? Yes, it is. And that lifts out. Well, I might it'll take these ones out as well. Can you see? I noticed some of the overhead shots I was doing before didn't work out so well. Right, so this is Sir holding that on. This one, apparently the connector broke off. So we'll have to have a look and see why. And of course, the warning lights, which are very dirty, it's been stored upside down. In fact, that doesn't look original to those. I'm wondering if that looks a bit better. Yes, it does. Okay, now that aluminium fascia is just wrapped around. You can see it's bent over. I would be inclined to try and clean this stuff off, just clean it up on here, because it'll act as a sort of a dolly when I muck around with it, and also a stable platform to try and improve on what it is. Right, there's a couple of things. These have a length. I pulled 2 of them apart. I pulled the speedo apart as well, the other speedo, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This fascia here looks terrible. Now, rather than plating that, and I'm a big sucker for plating, I'm just going to rattle can it. You don't actually see that. It sits behind the fascia. I believe you don't see it anyhow. Where's the? How much of it do you see? None of it. You don't see any of that. The good thing about these though is, of course, it's mid from behind, and that's where the lettering is stamped from. So it's just a matter of cleaning this stuff up and buffing it. So I want to paint this thing. I'll take this one off too and do it at the same time because I want to do the needles. So in order to do this, you have to be very careful. You can actually jimmy it up. And just a little bit. You don't want to put little stretch marks in the metal. And I've got these pliers. These are just cheap ones that I used on the motorcycle gauges where I've taken the teeth off. And that lets you bring it up nice and level like that. So I'm going to pop this out. Whoops, and I will be back. Much to my surprise, the other one actually looks to be in slightly better condition. I'm just going to pop that through. Some of the tabs had actually broken off that, and the other one didn't. And of course we've got our lenses, so it's just a case of just picking the best bits. That's in better nick. That doesn't even need painting, where the other one, the mask on the other one, is considerably more dirty, if you see what I mean. And I would sooner not paint if I don't need to. So I've got a couple of lenses to fiddle around with. I've got a couple of these to fiddle around with. This one's nowhere near as good, even though it looks brighter than this one. This one has all its tabs in place. That's been pulled apart before. So there's that to think about. And the same with these things here. So we've got, what do we got here? Right, so I've got this one. That pod looks fairly good. This one's out of the car and it's discoloured. So again, we've got to jimmy that up. I'm a little bit wary because it's been mucked around with. I do like the body on the other one better. This one's been sitting and it's full of dust and all that sort of business. I've got to be really careful with this. Fortunately, it's not stainless steel, because stainless, like on the motorcycles, is very hard to work with. And I ended up just bit by bit, if you know what I mean. This is actually difficult to see. In some cases, it's actually easier to flick those off and leave them intact, those tabs. This is the fuel gauge that's in slightly better condition, I think. That's one of those domes. Now I need to find out, I haven't got my power supply with me. I was wanting to find out exactly what voltage these things ran on. Maybe put a resistor there and figure it out that way, but I'm going to put that in a safe spot. And then just use the other, that's a better can, that one, and it's got a nice front on it. I just wanted to clean these cases up. I'm going to pop this out. I'll just see what that does. I imagine the whole thing would lift out. It does. That's just a mask of sorts, which we can clean that up. That's cool. And then under here is just more masks. And I want to protect it from Jesus, which way did that go? No, it goes that way, I can see it. That's cool. Sweet. It did have some foam behind there. But I wouldn't mind just recoloring those. Damn. I really want to get behind here because Harvey sort of showed me how to service them. I just need to be so bloody careful. Cool. That's so great, isn't it? I love old instrumentation. And we can do, oh, that's sealed. That part of it's sealed, you can take that off and that gearbox will come off, or at least that mechanism will come out. I'm actually reluctant to take that apart. But that's nice to know that I can do that. I just wouldn't mind cleaning this stuff up a bit. So what are we going to do? We're going to fix those up. The fuel gauge, which one's nicer? Oh God, I think this one's nicer. I'll just take that out and level some of these. Just a bit of wet and dry. It's important to think, if this car was original and had a pedigree, there's no way I'd be doing this. But it's like the XC in that it was a bit more complete than that was, but you know, all its pedigree's gone. It's just a shell. And so therefore, doing this sort of thing really doesn't matter. A lot of original instrumentation, like it's got that green dye and it'll be around bolts and all this sort of stuff to signify it's never been pulled apart like a seal. All these sorts of things add up to an original car. And a lot of people, particularly GT people or replica GT people, paint splashes of yellow on the covers and DSO on the rear axle and all this sort of stuff on the diff housing. They do all this stuff, but the car's still not original, you know what I mean? So I'm not putting any importance on that because the car's going to be homemade by me. Trying to straighten that a bit. This will go on the Speedo I don't use, and I'm tipping it's going to be the Speedo that came out of this car, or came out of that cluster. This one has all its tabs and it's straight, and that's because I took a little bit of care when I pulled it apart. One thing that surprises me, these are actually painted, they're not plated. I thought they were plated. You can see all the primer through there. Anyway, I suppose they would be because they're painted on the other side. The other thing, by just rattle counting them, I don't give a toss about these markings. As I said, the car's got no pedigree, but what it does do is it makes it so visible, all your writing. Just got a bit of Weet-Bix box, and I'm just going to stick that under there to act as masking. This is why I paint these. And we'll have to use something a bit smaller for the fuel gauges. And I haven't got much enamel paint, actually. I've only got a little bit of stuff, and I was thinking, oh, I haven't got any red, but I've got a model box, a model can that I bought ages ago, which is just that stuff. Your Humbrol stuff that they use on models is just jam. It's just enamel. And, you know, the only other yellow I've got to make orange is QD, which I've had for years and years, and it's all sort of turned to crap underneath it. So we'll just take the lid off. I'll see if I can make up a colour that vaguely resembles what we need. Okay, it's a bit darker than I want, but that's all I've got. And I think it'll be alright. I think it'll look fine. Being enamel, this stuff sticks, so you don't need to have, you know, your primers and all this sort of stuff. I think that'll probably do. Need to go across the bottom a bit better. I've got access to this Mustang stuff, which it's sort of like really fluoro. But looking at these EJ ones, sorry, they're a lot brighter than what I've just put on anyway. So I don't know, maybe I'm doing this all wrong. But I don't think it'll matter because it's age appropriate, the darker sort of orange, I think. Right, so this is what we've got. We've got 2 speedos, 2 fuel gauges, and these are the odds and ends that I've rattle canned. Yeah. Now, I put them together, but I'm not going to do it today. It's dry, but it's not fully dry, if you know what I mean. I think I just smudged it there. I don't think it matters. You never see this stuff. None of it is visible. Even those rings aren't visible from the when the instruments are actually mounted in the binnacle. We've also got a bunch of hydroblasting to get done, including these pieces here. We've got stuff we're keeping under these speedos for the carburettors, as well as electroplating. And I think I'll plate those as well, because I'm going to send this stuff off in the next couple of days. Next up, we'll go through which are the better lenses. We'll figure that out. I'll strip that. It's just a couple of bits and pieces, and we'll plate this stuff as well and hydroblast that manifold. But whatever the case, I hope you've enjoyed that. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. What do you reckon? Shit. Jesus.